You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. Be sure to smash that like button.
Mike Griffith, he covers the Bulldogs for DogNation.com. He's on Twitter at MikeGriffith32 and good enough to hang for a couple of minutes. Mike, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Man, this has got to feel like old hat for the Bulldogs at this point now because of their consistency in this game. Does this one feel any different for the collective Georgia program fan base than the others?
Well, yeah, because there's not Alabama or a historic LSU team on the other side. I mean, let's face it, they were up against it when they played against LSU in 2019. I mean, that might have been I think it was the best team of the modern era, and I guess my modern era goes back to the 1992 divisional split. I mean, to me, that was the best SEC championship team I've seen in my years covering the league, dating back to then. So it's a different feeling. Last year was Alabama, and that's kind of been its own animal with Nick Saban and Kirby Smart and their relationship, and Bryce Young working some magic last year, and Jalen Hurts coming off the bench in 2018 and coming from 2 touchdowns down. So, it's a little bit different to, kind of be the heavy and maybe see a team on the other side of the ball that doesn't look quite as prolific as we're used to seeing from the West.
Mike, we've talked about this a lot this year as I've watched Georgia play a ton this year. And to say it flatly, there's times they just look bored. I think they've been so much better than everybody for basically 2 years now. It's like they're playing with their food. Am I missing it? Because the times we've seen them lock in, obviously, Oregon, Tennessee, they're the best team in college football by a mile. But is that symptomatic of this team where maybe they just look a little disinterested at times?
Well, I don't know about that. I think they're pretty beatable. I mean, I think there's teams that have had opportunities and didn't cash in. Now, there's been times they've been on top of their game. I don't know if I'd call it disinterest. I don't think Georgia's as dominant as they were from a personnel standpoint last year when they had 5 first-round picks off their defense and 15 NFL picks. Now, make no mistake about it, you could see 3 or 4 first-round guys here and maybe 8 or 9 draft picks. But, last year's team was historically great. This year's team has been the biggest rebuild in college football history. I can't find another NCAA team that lost 15 guys to the NFL draft and 13 guys to the portal and 4 guys off the coaching staff, but that's what Kirby lost. So the story of this year's team's really been a reload. It's been a favorable schedule that's given Georgia some grace and opportunities to get better as the year's gone on. But they've been beatable at times. I mean, Georgia Tech outplayed them through the first 30 minutes. I mean, Georgia was up, I think, 10-7, but if Georgia Tech doesn't drop a ball, they could have been up 14-0 in the second quarter. And Kentucky just couldn't get anything going offensively. They bogged down in the red zone. It's a 16-6 game. That's only 1 touchdown for Georgia, right? And then Mississippi State, they were within 3 or 4 at halftime. And then, so there's been time. Missouri was up 10 in the fourth quarter. I don't think this is just some dynamic Georgia team that can just turn it on. I think this is just a team that, really hasn't faced too great of it. The one great opponent they faced was Tennessee, and it was in Sanford Stadium, and the crowd was, incredibly loud and forced 6 false starts and created all sorts of havoc for Hendon Hooker. And then it poured rain the second half. So, I mean, I don't think this is some unbeatable force. Last year's team looked pretty unbeatable. This team, not so much.
It's interesting. Last year's team looked unbeatable, and then they got run in the SEC championship game. So it's interesting, though. But you said, all right, so this team is beatable, Mike. Let's explore a little bit there. Where are the weaknesses, then, that can be exposed?
Well, if you put pressure on Stetson Bennett and make him go downfield, that's where he's been exposed. I mean, it starts out with stopping the run. It starts out with playing an aggressive scheme like Kentucky did and being able to press those receivers. I mean, although Ladd McConkey he's their best outside threat, Ladd McConkey. A.D. Mitchell's been out all year with a high ankle sprain. Obviously, you've got to, play those safeties, on top of the tight ends. But other than that, you've just got to press outside receivers and put pressure on Stetson Bennett, keep him in the pocket. I mean, but you got to hold up at the line of scrimmage, and you've got to apply some offensive pressure. You've got to score some points, And when teams have done that, they've had success and been in the game. Like I said, Missouri was up 10 in the fourth quarter. Missouri.
Yeah.
I mean, that was not an optical illusion. That really happened. The Georgia Tech was, I think, outgained by 50 yards in the first half of Sanford Stadium, and that wasn't an illusion. The Georgia Tech went right down the field and scored. That's something a lot of teams haven't done is score early. And, Georgia's only trailed at the end of the first quarter twice all year. Missouri was one of them. And they've only given up one touchdown in the first quarter. So I think it's going to be really important for Brian Kelly and his staff to be able to scheme some things up and, get out in front of Georgia and kind of take them out of their comfort zone. Otherwise, Kirby's just going to pound the ball and wear the other team down.
Yeah. The really interesting thing about that Missouri game, Missouri kicked 5 field goals. So obviously you got to be able to finish in the red zone if you're LSU. I want to dig a little deeper though on that Georgia defense. I think everybody knows all the names. Like it was so as great as that team was. They kind of called themselves the no-name defense a year ago. Oddly, you've got potential number 1 overall pick in that defensive front this year. What about the secondary? If LSU's going to be able to make plays, how good is that Georgia secondary? Where might they be susceptible?
Well, I mean, they're susceptible if you give the quarterback time to throw. Keely Ringo has kind of been feast or famine. He's made some big plays. He's gotten beat deep. But the whole key is to give your quarterback enough time, or for your quarterback to buy the time. I don't think there's any quarterback corner that can, cover indefinitely. The reason they were called the no-name defense was, I started that after, I want to say maybe the 2019 season. I think they had the number 1 defense in the SEC, and they only had one guy make all SEC.
Right.
And then at the start of last year, the USA Today didn't have any Georgia guys on their preseason first team on offense or defense last year. So it kind of played into it and it was kind of accentuated. Like, it was more of a joke. Like, nobody's really paying attention here. It's kind of funny. Like, how do you not have anybody from Georgia make all SEC when they're number 1 in the league in total defense 3 out of 4 years? Well, because of the Alabama bias. We don't need to get into that. You probably experienced plenty of that at LSU. But to your point, the way to set up the pass plays is by staying ahead of the chain and with able to, pick up 4 or 5 yards on first down and find yourself in a 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, or 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. You put the defense in a run-pass conflict because that enables you to run or pass. But you get behind the chains in a 2nd and 10 or 3rd and 8, you're making yourself pretty predictable, and you're going to have a hard time beating Kirby if he knows what you're doing.
He is Mike Griffith on Twitter at MikeGriffith32, dognation.com. You want to go follow the Bulldogs there. I always like to ask about special teams as well, Mike, and that's been if I'm just calling it honestly, that's been a bit of a fiasco for LSU all season long. Last time LSU played Georgia, Rodrigo Blankenship was pretty, I don't want to say automatic, but was obviously really good. Podlesny is the kicker now and has been pretty good. How confident are you if it comes down to a kick, or should Georgia be if it comes down to a kick that they got the guy that's going to drill it?
Yeah, he's been more reliable than Rodrigo in the clutch. I mean, he hit the 50-yarder against Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl in 2020. Oh, yeah. I think he's got a chance to finish as the most accurate kicker. And, Rodrigo actually missed some pretty key kicks. He missed a key kick against South Carolina in their only home loss since 2017. He missed a field goal against Alabama in the SEC championship game. This guy's better. This guy's more accurate. Rodrigo was a great kicker and an All-American and, a celebrated figure, very popular, with the respect to specs, goggles, and all that. Jack Podlesny's been a lot more low-key, but you look pretty close at those numbers, you'll find out that he's actually been more accurate.
Yeah, man. Yeah, if it does come down to a kick, I think the style of the game would play into LSU's hands. I think most people, Mike, obviously are going to pick Georgia to win this game. Understandably, they're a 17.5-point favorite. If LSU does shock the collective college football world and manage to beat Georgia tomorrow in Atlanta, how do you think it looks?
Turnovers, big plays, Jaden Daniels, making big plays. You got to hope the guy's healthy. I mean, he needs to be elite. He's got elite speed when he's 100%, escapability, and can buy time and break down defenses. And the LSU defense is going to have to, create havoc. They're going to have to, forced Stetson Bennett into turnovers, and he's had turnovers in 3 of the last 5 games. He had 5 interceptions in 3 games over this last 5-game period. Now, if you take a look at the Georgia run-pass ratio, Kirby's been pretty careful to keep the ball on the ground where he can. That's where a fast start is so important, and forcing Georgia to throw the ball. Turn them over, control the clock. I mean, Kirby's 55-1 when Georgia scores 30 points. So I don't think you really want to get into a scoring contest as much as, you want to take advantage of turnovers and be able to sustain drives. I mean, Brian Kelly knows. Brian Kelly outcoached Kirby Smart in 2019. They lost in Athens, but that was because of the crowd. Once again, I mean, Georgia's crowd is so underrated, and I know Tiger Stadium is epic too, but, Georgia's crowd in 2019 against LSU caused 6 false starts. And yet there was Notre Dame driving for a potential game-winning touchdown in the last minute. And Georgia was considerably more talented than Notre Dame. So Brian Kelly's a great coach. I don't know, if he's got the horses this year. Obviously, this is a guy that's only going to make LSU better year after year after year. So, you got the coach. You've got a dynamic quarterback you hope is healthy. You've got some playmakers on defense. And LSU's done this before. Hey, listen, guys, I was here in 2001. I was a Tennessee beat writer. And there was no way that Tennessee team was going to lose to LSU in 2001 until they did. Yeah. So I'm not counting LSU out of anything in this game.
I was there in 01. Mike, I was also in Athens for the 04 LSU-Georgia game, and I can attest that's a loud crowd. they can cause problems for a lot of teams. He is Mike Griffith on Twitter at MikeGriffith32, DogNation.com. Mike, we appreciate it, man. Look forward to seeing you in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium tomorrow.
Yep. All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.